I felt my heart stop as Robert's words sank in. The vintage ring collection my grandmother had spent her life curating, gone. Sold off while I was on a 2-week trip to visit my sick aunt. At a decent price too, Robert continued, leaning against my bedroom doorframe. About time someone turned those dusty old things into real money. I carefully folded a sweater, keeping my movements deliberate and calm. And what did you do with the money, Robert? He shrugged, adjusting his expensive new watch. Invested it. That's what your mother and I do. We make smart financial decisions. Unlike you, hanging onto all this sentimental junk. My name is Elizabeth Chen, and at 34, I was watching my stepfather gloat about selling the last connection I had to my grandmother. What he didn't know was that those rings weren't just family heirlooms. They were evidence. Well, I said, placing another sweater in my drawer. I suppose you're right. Can't live in the past forever. Robert's smug smile faltered slightly. He'd expected tears, anger, maybe even a dramatic confrontation. My calm acceptance threw him off balance. Your mother agrees with me, he added, as if seeking to justify himself. She says it's time you moved on. Grace has been gone for 5 years now. Grace. My grandmother's name felt wrong coming from his mouth. She'd never trusted Robert, had seen through his charming facade from the moment my mother brought him home 8 years ago. Watch that one, she'd warned me. He's got sticky fingers and a silver tongue. If only we'd listened. 3 years into my mother's marriage to Robert, our family business, a successful chain of high-end jewelry stores that my grandparents had built from nothing, started showing signs of trouble. Robert, who convinced my mother to make him CFO, insisted it was just market fluctuations. But Grace had known better. She'd started collecting evidence, documenting discrepancies, tracking suspicious transactions. The rings she collected over her lifetime weren't just beautiful pieces. Each one had been carefully chosen to tell a story. A story that Robert would have found very interesting if he bothered to look closer. I continued unpacking my suitcase, remembering the last conversation I'd had with Grace before she passed away. The proof is in the collection, she'd said, her voice weak, but her mind sharp as ever. Each ring, each provenance document, it's all there. When the time comes, you'll know what to do. I hadn't understood then, but in the years since her death, as I watched Robert slowly drain our family's resources while maintaining his facade of business acumen, I'd started to piece it together. Where did you sell them? I asked casually, hanging up a dress. I might know someone interested in vintage jewelry. Robert waved his hand dismissively. Some dealer in Chicago. Bought cash, no questions asked. Best way to handle these things. I nodded, making a mental note. Chicago. That fit with what I'd suspected. Well, I said, closing my now empty suitcase, I should get some rest. Long flight. Robert lingered in the doorway for a moment longer, clearly unsatisfied with my reaction. But what could he say? He'd achieved his goal. The rings were gone, and with them, he thought, any evidence of his creative accounting. What he didn't know was that I'd been preparing for this moment for months. Ever since I finally decoded my grandmother's meticulous documentation and understood exactly what she discovered about Robert's financial dealings. Each ring in her collection corresponded to a specific transaction, a particular account, a certain pattern of fraud. The collection itself was a key, one that could unlock a trail of evidence showing exactly how Robert had been embezzling from our family business for years. And thanks to my grandmother's foresight, I had copies of everything. Every certificate, every appraisal, every seemingly innocent note about each ring's history, all safely stored in a secure cloud account, waiting for the right moment. That night, I lay in bed listening to the sounds of the house settling. Through the wall, I could hear Robert and my mother talking in their room. She didn't even cry, he was saying, sounding annoyed. Just accepted it, like it meant nothing. Maybe she's finally growing up, my mother replied, learning to let go of the past, like you've been saying. I turned over, pulling my phone from under my pillow. Time to set things in motion. I typed out a quick text to Michael, my contact at the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. It's done. He sold the collection, just like we predicted. Chicago dealer. Cash transaction. Michael's response came quickly. Perfect. That completes the pattern. We'll move forward with the investigation. You sure about this? No turning back once we start. I thought about my grandmother, about how hard she'd worked to build our family's business. about how Robert had spent years systematically draining it while convincing my mother he was protecting her interests. "I'm sure," I typed back. Time to finish what Grace started. The next morning, I drove to our flagship store in downtown Seattle. The business my grandparents had built now consisted of 12 locations across the Pacific Northwest. The profits had been mysteriously declining for years despite steady sales. As I walked through the showroom, nodding to familiar faces among the staff, I remembered following Grace through the same space as a child. She taught me everything about the business, not just about jewelry, but about integrity, about building something that would last. "Elizabeth," Robert's voice boomed across the store. He was heading toward me, arms open in an exaggerated welcome gesture. "Didn't expect to see you here today. Thought you'd be resting after your trip. Just wanted to check in," I said, noting how several employees tensed at his approach. They knew something was wrong with the business, even if they couldn't prove it. "See how things are going?" "Everything's fine," he said quickly, too quickly. In fact, I was just about to make some calls about a new investment opportunity. "Very promising." "I bet it was. Another shell company? Another fake supplier?" I'd seen the patterns in Grace's documentation. How Robert moved money through increasingly complex networks of transactions, always staying just ahead of detection. "Sounds interesting," I said. "Maybe we could discuss it over lunch? I'd love to learn more about the business side of things." Robert's eyes narrowed slightly. In the 8 years he'd been married to my mother, I'd never shown interest in his financial dealings. My sudden curiosity must have triggered something in his predator's instincts. "Sure," he said slowly. "Why don't we grab lunch tomorrow? I have some meetings today that can't wait." "Of course," I smiled. "Tomorrow's perfect." "Oh, and Robert," I called as he turned to leave. "Thank you for handling grandmother's rings. You're right, it's time for changes around here." He paused, studying my face for any sign of sarcasm or hidden meaning. Finding none, he nodded and continued toward his office. As soon as he was gone, I sent another text to Michael. He took the bait, getting nervous about my sudden interest in the business. "Good," came the reply. "Keep him talking. We've traced the Chicago dealer. Just need a few more days to document the connection." I walked through the store, touching familiar displays, remembering Grace's lessons about quality and craftsmanship. Robert thought he'd erased her presence by selling her collection, but he'd actually sealed his own fate. Those rings, and their carefully documented histories, were the final piece of evidence needed to prove his years of financial fraud. Tomorrow's lunch would be interesting indeed. But first, I had one more stop to make. I drove to the cemetery where Grace was buried, placing fresh flowers on her grave. The autumn wind rustled through nearby trees, carrying the scent of rain. "It's happening, Gran," I said softly. "Everything you predicted, everything you prepared for." Robert finally made his move. I touched the simple gold band on my right hand, the only ring from Grace's collection that hadn't been in the house when Robert made his sale. She'd given it to me the day before she died, along with a single piece of paper that had seemed meaningless at the time. Now that paper, combined with all her other documentation, would bring down the man who'd spent years stealing from our family while pretending to protect it. "You were right," I whispered. "The truth always comes out. Sometimes it just needs a little help." The next day dawned gray and drizzly, typical Seattle weather. I arrived at Luciano's, Robert's favorite overpriced Italian restaurant, precisely 5 minutes early. He was already there, nursing a martini at 11:30 in the morning. "Elizabeth," he said, standing as I approached the table. "Glad you could make it. I ordered you a glass of wine." "Just water for me," I told the hovering waiter. "I need a clear head for business discussions." Robert's smile tightened slightly. "Of course. Always so serious, just like Grace." I opened my bag, pulling out a small notebook. Speaking of Grace, I'd been going through some of her old business records. Fascinating stuff. The martini glass paused halfway to his lips. "Old records? What kind of records?" "Oh, transaction histories, supplier contracts, investment details." She was quite meticulous about documentation. I watched his face carefully. "Did you know she kept a separate file for each piece in her ring collection? Every purchase, every certification, every connection to the business." Robert set his glass down with a sharp click. "Those files were destroyed years ago, during the office renovation." "The physical copies, yes," I agreed. But Grace believed in backups, digital copies stored securely. She was quite forward-thinking for her generation. The color drained from his face. "You're bluffing. There's no way she—" "Robert?" A new voice interrupted us. We both looked up to see two men in suits standing by our table. "I'm Agent Michael Chen with the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. We need you to come with us." What happened next was almost cinematic. Robert tried to run, knocking over the table in his haste. He made it 3 steps before another agent appeared, blocking his path. The restaurant patrons watched in shocked silence as he was handcuffed and led away, still protesting his innocence. I sat calmly, sipping my water. "Ms. Chen." Agent Chen approached after Robert had been taken out. "We'll need you to come down to the office to make a formal statement." I nodded, gathering my things. "Of course. Just let me call my mother first." That call was the hardest part. My mother had always been brilliant at running the creative side of our jewelry business, but she trusted Robert completely with the finances. Finding out that her husband had been systematically stealing from us for years would devastate her. But as I listened to her broken sobs over the phone, I knew we'd done the right thing. The truth would hurt, but lies had already cost us too much. At the FBI office, I laid out everything. Grace's documentation, the connection between her ring collection and Robert's fraud, the complex web of shell companies and fake suppliers he used to siphon money from our family business. "Your grandmother was brilliant," Agent Chen said, reviewing the evidence. Each ring's provenance documentation contained coded references to specific fraudulent transactions. When arranged chronologically, they created a perfect paper trail of Robert's crimes. "She knew he'd try to get rid of the collection eventually," I explained. "His type always does. They need to erase anything that could expose them." By selling the rings, he actually confirmed their connection to his illegal activities. The investigation moved quickly after that. The Chicago dealer was found. He'd been one of Robert's accomplices for years, helping to launder money through fake jewelry purchases. The rings themselves were recovered, each one still carrying its damning documentation. Robert, facing overwhelming evidence, took a plea deal. 8 years in federal prison, plus restitution of all stolen funds. The total amount shocked even me, nearly $12 million over 7 years. My mother filed for divorce immediately. She threw herself into rebuilding the business, channeling her grief and anger into positive change. Together, we modernized operations, strengthened security measures, and restored our family company to its former glory. 6 months later, I stood in our flagship store's newly renovated vault, carefully arranging Grace's recovered ring collection in a special display case. Each piece gleamed under the lighting, telling its own story of justice served. "Your grandmother would be proud," my mother said softly, joining me at the display. "Not just of saving the business, but of how you handled everything. You did it her way, patient, methodical, letting the truth speak for itself." I touched the simple gold band I still wore, Grace's last gift to me. She taught me that the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about standing up for what's right, no matter how long it takes. That evening, I visited Grace's grave again. The autumn rain had given way to a crisp, clear night. I placed her favorite white roses beside the headstone. "We did it, Gran," I whispered. "Your plan worked perfectly." Robert never saw it coming. He was so busy looking down on us that he never looked closely at what was right in front of him. I told her about the business, about how we were growing stronger than ever, about how her ring collection was now a testament to female strength and ingenuity, inspiring a new generation of women in our family. As I drove home, I passed by the federal detention center where Robert was serving his sentence. I didn't stop, didn't even slow down. He was part of our past now, a cautionary tale about trust and vigilance. The next morning, a package arrived at the store. Inside was a letter from Robert's former secretary, along with a stack of documents. "I always knew something was wrong," she wrote, "but I was too afraid to speak up. Your grandmother once told me that the truth has a way of surfacing, like a diamond rising through kimberlite." She was right. These are copies of everything I saved over the years, just in case someone was brave enough to take action. I added the documents to our archives, next to Grace's meticulously coded records. Together, they told a story of greed, betrayal, and ultimate justice. But more importantly, they told a story of wisdom passed down through generations of strong women. Our family business continued to thrive. We established the Grace Chen Foundation, providing scholarships for women studying business and forensic accounting. Every recipient received a small gold ring, a reminder that sometimes the most powerful weapons against corruption are patience, intelligence, and careful documentation. Years later, when Robert was released from prison, he tried to contact us. His lawyer sent a letter full of apologies and excuses, asking for a chance to make amends. I sent back a single photograph, Grace's ring collection, restored to its rightful place, each piece now labeled with the evidence it had carried. No message was necessary. The truth, as Grace had always said, speaks for itself. Some people called it karma. Others called it justice, but I knew it was something simpler, the power of a grandmother's love and wisdom, carefully preserved in a collection of rings that proved more valuable than anyone could have imagined. Well, anyone except Grace. The last paper she'd given me, the one that had seemed meaningless at first, now hangs framed in my office. It's a simple quote written in her elegant hand. "The truth is like a fine diamond. It may be hidden for years, but its value never diminishes. Keep watching, keep waiting, and when the time is right, let it shine." And shine it did, bringing light to darkness and justice to those who thought they were above it. Just as Grace had planned all along,